This conference will now be recorded.
Hello all, welcome back for another session on performance testing using NeoLoad. So let's have a quick recap on what we had discussed in the previous session. In the previous session, we casually looked at this uh, demo application, and we have seen what all this uh, the requests that are involved in creating this web page. So if I refresh, these are the series of requests that is making this specific web pages. So if you can see, the web page has some hyperlinks, some fields, some images, GIFs, and so on and so on. NeoLoad as a performance testing tool or any performance testing tool, it will capture all these individual requests and create a script. Okay. So the performance testing is all about the request and its corresponding response. So a request is sent by the client and then a response is received by the sent by the server. So how quick the server can respond to the client, that is all we are going to check. Okay, and there are some certain concepts around it that we will discuss as we progress. So we recorded uh, this script, or also called as workflow. So the end user launches the application, clicking on fish, click on angelfish, clicking on large angelfish, and then coming back to home page. To simulate this, I would like to show you. So this is launch, clicking on fish, clicking on angelfish, clicking on large angelfish, and then coming back to the home page. This is from the recording side. Before we further move into other topics, I would like to show you some introduction about performance. Uh, so let's discuss this. So performance testing introduction. Right? So to determine the performance of the application under various load, okay, that is why we are doing this performance testing, and especially this ever since this pandemic started, there was a huge influx in customers. Like many businesses have gone online, and there is a uh, enormous amount of traffic or unpredictable traffic that many businesses have faced and suffered, and all of them are kind of associated with performance of the application. Performance not just uh, uh, discuss about performance, there is also other aspects like scalability, capability, stability, and so on. We will discuss all the other concepts as we progress. So why one should do performance testing, right? Just a moment. This is happening. Okay. So why performance testing? Of course, loss of business, faster the website, more the revenue. So how is it a loss of business? And then, of course, these aspects: scalability, stability, and robustness. So how a business can lose uh, due to performance related issues. So let's say we have a e-commerce business, or let's just compare a fastest or existing big businesses. Let's say Amazon or Flipkart. So as an end user, I'm trying to open flipkart.com. If that website does not open to me in 5 to 10 seconds, I'm going to go to amazon.com, right? So there is a opportunity cost. So it's like as good as keeping the store open. If the store is not opening, or it's not opened, it is obvious that we will lose the customers to the competitors. So this is one aspect, that is the from the opportunity cost perspective. A business can suffer losses due to performance. Another part is faster the website, more the revenue. How this uh, can be taken into consideration. If the business is, or if the website is fast with good success rate, there is with good integrity, right? So it can bring in more customers, or the returning customers, just because the website is good, right? It is responsive, and so on and so forth. So if the website is fast, then high chance of more revenue and more profits. More revenue will turn into more profitability. The final part is these three aspects, right? Uh, One is scalability, that is how quickly the system can scale. Nowadays, we have this auto scaling of instances. Um, Whoever has worked on this container Docker or Kubernetes, you can you will probably know, or even with the Azure platforms, right? Azure cloud platform. So nowadays, the systems are designed in such a way that it can scale to manifold based on the requirement, based on certain criteria. If the business hits certain criteria, then it is easily the recent applications have been designed to easily scale it. So scalability. Stability, how stable the system is despite the number of users are coming in, right? So this is discussing about the server shouldn't go down, or it should not get restarted. So there are other aspects that are associated with this stability, right? And then robustness talks about the integrity, or how robust the system is, or let's say the validation or verification, right? So let's say I'm making an order on Amazon. Okay, it should reflect, I mean, the transaction gets completed. That means the product should be placed, the order should be placed, the the funds should get debited from the account that I'm using. Everything should go in a proper manner. That is the integrity. It is talking about integrity. So if, in a way, if we target only these three aspects, that is a scalability, stability, and robustness, then 80 to 90% of the system's performance is ready. Because these, most of the times, we will only find difficulties or hurdles in either of these three aspects. So if we have these three aspects uh, sorted, so we can create a very good robust system. So this is why the performance testing is required. Let's talk about some performance testing types. Okay, so with performance testing, it is not always a one type of test. Okay, although performance test, that is the general term, performance test, right? It is usually is referred to this load test. Load test is synonymous to performance test, but load test is itself as a separate kind of test. As you can see, it's application under peak user load. Okay, that is load test. There is stress test. Stress test is um, is to identify the breakpoint, or how much it can how much the system can push, right? If the system can handle only 100 users, so let's push it to 150, then 180, 200, 250, right? We are pushing the system, we're stressing the system until it reaches the breakpoint, right? And hence we can also identify the future expected load. Soak test to determine the stability. So this is soak test is only focused on the stability that we discussed in the previous slide. Stability, um, you- soak test can also be called as endurance test, right? So these tests goes for a longer period of time duration to see if there is any, if the system is acting funny, or if there is any anomalies, right? That is for soak test, focused only on the stability. Smoke test, I think you may already know. Smoke test is just like a warm up test or validation test. This test is used mostly to check or validate the scripts, the populations, the configurations that we have given, the runtime, all of them. That, so before we go for the actual load test or other kinds of tests, smoke test is done. Spike test is used to simulate a sudden jump in the user load. So it's like this, right? The real time examples that we can say. So uh, uh, let's say for some reason everybody decides to walk into the bank at 9:30 a.m., right? Or uh, the ATM, right? So there is a sudden jump in the um, user load. Okay. Then capacity is to determine uh, the maximum limit of the application, but both capacity and stress test goes in a way hand in hand, right? So that is capacity. So workflow, uh, just a moment. So what is a workflow is just a series of user action. Okay. user action user action um, so to show you, I'm just opening this application again. Okay. So I'll open google.com. Okay. So I'm the end user now. Okay. So let's say I decide to click on this field. Okay. This is one user action. Okay. And I say, let's say whether this is another user action. Okay. But user action generally, so I'm just opening the developer tool. Okay. This is much better. Okay. So I'm clicking on home page. Okay. So this is one user action. Let's say I decide to search something. Okay. So let's say I would like to search birds, something like this. Okay. I have typed something, but nothing happened in the backend. Okay. There is no request being sent to the server nor a response received from the server. Okay. So typing birds, as far as this application is concerned, is not a user action. Okay. When we can consider something as a user action, so now I'm going to click on search, and okay, so I will clear this. Okay, I'm going to hit on search. Now you see something is happening in the backend, right? That is, um, from the client, some requests are sent to the server. Okay, only then this can be considered as a user action. Okay, and a series of user action. Okay, that is like going to launch, then clicking on finish fish, then click on angelfish, and all these different user actions, right? All of them together can be called as a workflow. Okay, so let's look at a small example. Okay, so I'm going to launch some web page. Okay, got it. So what I will do is I will go to Wikipedia. Okay, now here there is a search button, search field. I'm searching testing. So I got this as the web page. Okay, so all this like launching, search testing, and clicking on link. Okay, so I just click enter and click on link. So it's the same. Okay, so this is the simple example for the workflow. So user action, we are going to call this as a transaction. Okay, this is the transaction is widely used in performance. Okay, so this is not going to be called as user action anymore. We'll call this as a transaction, and transaction is the keyword used in performance testing. Okay, so a transaction consists of a group of requests, okay, that belongs to one specific user action, right? So we have seen this transaction launch. Okay, so you can see there is a bunch of requests, like a group of requests belongs to one transaction. So one transaction can have one or more web page, and one web page can have one or more uh, requests. Any questions so far? Any question on the workflow, the transaction? So I assume we are good. Yes, Abhi, you have any question?
Yeah. No, no, no. I am good.
No? All good? Okay, fine. All right. So let me proceed. Okay. Let's look at this client server architecture. It's a very simple client server architecture. Okay, so we were discussing about this just a while back. Okay, so this is a simple uh, architecture, right? Where there is a client, that is the client machine, and then the server machine. Okay, so how any web page that opens, right? First, a client sends a request to the server, and then the server sends a response. So client is sending a request, and then server responding to the client. Okay, and so this will be called as a request, right? And whatever the server is sending it, that is going to be called as a response. Okay, the entire performance is all about this. That it's just a play off between these two, request and response, but there are much more into it. Okay, but the crux of performance testing is just this, right? So there is a, that is at least from the scripting perspective, there is a request and there is a response. Okay, so how these works together and how this will work along, that we will discuss as we progress. Okay, since we talked about this, it's only the crux of scripting is request and response. Let's discuss a component of requests. So there are different components. Okay, so let's see. uh, so first component is this http method. Okay, this method is get, post, delete, put, option, trace, and so on and so forth. There are many methods. Out of this, get and post takes 99% of the existing methods. Okay, mostly it's get, post is post, delete, put. All these methods are used uh, when we would need to send some data to the server. Okay, something like that. Then URL, which is the application URL, can also be called as endpoint URL. Okay, usually in APIs, if we are working with APIs, we will This is called as endpoint URL. Okay, but it's just the URL. And then there is a series of header attributes. Okay, some of these headers are mandatory, some of them are not mandatory, some of them are I mean appears um, like on the fly, right? Some of them does not even get recorded. So that is the header attributes. It's the third component. Fourth is the body, or can also be translated to parameters. Okay, this part is optional. Okay, so to have a complete request, you need all these three methods, that is HTTP method, URL, and headers. Three components makes a complete request. Body is optional. If any one of them is missing, am I audible?
Yes, Naveen.
Hey, sorry, yeah, I got disconnected. I got connected back. Okay, fine. Let's continue. Request components. So like how we have request components, similarly we have response components, components of response. So let's like discuss about this response components. Okay. So the first component is response code, also called as status code. Okay. Then headers, series of headers, header attributes, and then the body. Let's see this components, right? So I'm just going to the NeoLoad. I'll click on advanced. Okay. And then clicking on recorded request. Okay. So as you can see, it starts with get. Okay. So get is one of the HTTP method, and then there's a link. Okay. And then the series of header attributes. This is on the request. And then recorded response. Okay. Um, so here we can see this, right? This 200 is the one of the status code, HTTP status code, or response code. And then there is a series of header attributes that is from the response, and then there is this body which starts from this doc type HTML, is the body of the response. Any questions so far between this request, the components of request and the response? Anything on this? Because this is kind of fundamental that we should know about this. Okay, there is no question. I will proceed. Okay, so let's discuss about this response code, as this is one of the major component that can be used to determine how the request has went. Okay, so let's see. Response code or HTTP status code are issued by the server in response to the client's request. Okay, so a client machine is sending a request to the server, and then the server responds to the client machine with some code. Okay, so this code determines whether if this request is successful, or it is redirected, or is a client side error or server side error, which which type that just belongs to. So there are different categories associated with this response code. Let's discuss about it. Okay. So the first one is this response code is usually 100x or it is 100 series. Okay. It is about informational. It is just giving some information about it. The second one is 200 series. 200 series is all about the success. That means the request that is being sent by the client is successful. Okay. There are again subcategories with this 200 that we will see how this looks like. Okay. Then there is a redirection. Okay. Redirection is more uh, like a call forwarding facility, right? Like let's say I'm calling Abhi, and Abhi has created a call forwarding to a different number, right? So what is happening? So I'm calling Abhi's phone number, and he has scheduled or set up a call forwarding option to a different number, and it gets forwarded to that. It's very similar. The functionality is very similar to this, right? The 300 series is all about redirection and how it is redirecting. There are again some subcategories that we will discuss about in some time. There is a 400 series. Okay, 400 series means it's client side error. So when we say a client side error, okay, that means something is wrong with the request. That is all. Something is wrong, and what is that? The wrong part that we have to identify. Okay, again there is a lot of subcategory into it that we will discuss shortly. And then there is 500 server side error. 500 series server side error, as it says, some issue from the server end. Okay, nothing wrong with the client side, now with the server end. So if you look at this, right, the informational part, very occasionally that we will face that, and the other four, 200, 300, 400, 500, it's we can see them, it's more predominant. Our focus is mostly on the 400 series because it's a client side error, right? When we say client side error, something is wrong with the request, right? And majority of the focus is only into this 400 series that we will discuss now. Okay, so see this, right? This link, I will also share you this link. Just a moment. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay, HTTP status or HTTP response status codes. So 100 series informational. So you can see this, right? 100 continue. This is interim response. So 100 series very rarely that we will see, and there is only four options here. Okay, so let's move on to 200. 200 series. All the 200 series are successful responses, but some with subcategory. 200 okay means the request is succeeded, as it says. 201, it's created that some record is being getting created in the system, right? That is 201. Accepted. So your request is accepted, but there is nothing has been acted. Okay, so it's like broadcasting a message, right? Like you're sending it to too many people or something like that. Okay, and some of them are not very common. We don't really see them, uh, right? So let's look at some of the redirection messages. Redirection, as I said, it is a forwarding facility, right? So 300 means the same request has two different so it's like two different path, something like that. Okay, so it is bifurcated or trifurcated. So there are more than one possible response. Okay, that is 300. 301 moved permanently. So this is like the actual forwarding, right? That is from one request to another request, it got moved permanently. Yes, that is the 301. The others are very less common. And 307 temporary redirect. So this happens, right? Sometimes, uh, so let's say some business has got acquired, or maybe uh, um, so let's say the business is trying to migrate from one URL to another URL and something like that, right? So they will have something like 307 temporarily redirects. Okay, or maybe there is also some third party applications that is plugged into the system, because not everyone can create indigenous tech to to resolve or to solve their problems, right? So usually there are other this cloud services, and there is many other components that gets uh, together, makes one specific application, right? So they can also set up something like temporary redirect. Okay, there is a permanent redirect. Okay, so this means the as you can see, right, it is permanently located at another URI. Okay, so the location, everything is different. It is very similar to 301, not much difference. So that is the 300 series. 300 series is all about redirection. So, and with some associated meaning to it, the subcategory. 400, 400 is about these uh, the client side error. Okay, 400 bad request. This means the request that we have sent is wrong. Some issue with that, associated with that. Okay, it's a malformed request. 401 is unauthorized. That means you are not authorized to access this content. Okay, you are unauthenticated. How how this happens, right? I think we all must have come across this different types of tokens. There is CSRF token, bearer token, XSRF token, right? Many types of tokens, and these tokens are kind of sent by the server, and in a way we have to handle these tokens in such a way that it works and it doesn't throw and that uh, determines the authentication of the end user. Okay, 403 forbidden. That means it is distinctly different, although it may sound very similar. So let's say there is a different user roles, right? There is a manager and there is a normal employee, right? And every company has some internal applications to either let's say like a simple activity like entering a timesheet, or uh, uh, tracking somebody's present or absent or leave tracker, something like that, right? So let's say an employee got a direct link who can access the other employee's leave request. Okay, uh, but that specific person does not have the required permission. But even though if we try to access that direct link, the system will throw 403 forbidden. That is, that specific user is forbidden to access that content because of lack of permission, lack of grant. Okay, a manager can access because he has the permission, but an employee cannot access it. Okay, so that is forbidden. 404, another most common one, that is no such web page is available in the server. 407 proxy authentication, very similar to 401, but this is associated with proxy. Okay, all the life science, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, banking, finance, insurance, reinsurance, all these top domains, right? They will have something that is associated with proxy, and yeah, this is like uh, uh, this error is associated with that. Okay. 408 request timeout. That is, there is after a stipulated amount of time, this there is no response, right? Um, uh, so it's the server is idle, right? So that is 408. Conflict 409. Okay. So when a request conflicts with the current state of server, this happens. And although this is like highly unlikely, right? And most of them not much predominant. 413, payload too large. This happens when a huge query or a, I think you must be aware of this JSON calls. Okay. When certain calls, JSON calls, right? There is the payload, the data is getting sent to the server is too low or too huge, right? Then the server might not take this. Okay. And it throws 413. Okay. And others, I don't think it's more prominent. 422, unprocessable entity. Okay. This happens due to the semantic error. Okay. This also happens with uh, applications like insurance, right, where they have something like this underwriter and maybe a contract. uh, there are some agreements, and what happens, any insurance projects is coupled so tightly that it'll have a lot of dependencies. Okay, it will have a lot of dependencies with either different application or different system altogether. Okay. So it's a kind of amalgamation of many small components or a small applications of its own. And sometimes what happens, right, some contract gets locked with by some user or something happens over there, right? So due to such dependencies, we will get this 422 unprocessable entity issue. Okay. And the others are again uh, not too common. Okay, so that's about the 400 series. Let's move on to 500. Server error response. So 500 is internal server error. uh, uh, that means the server does not know what to do, right? The best example is, let's say, there is a form that we are submitting. We are giving, let's say it's asking for age is it's supposed to be an integer or numerical value. If you try to give some random numbers or something, right? If it is, so this is an exception. If the developer did not handle this properly, that is the exception, then the server will throw this 500 internal server error. 502, bad gateway. 503, service unavailable. That means the server is cannot handle more requests. The server is overloaded. Okay. 504, gateway timeout. That means the server is acting as a gateway and cannot get a response. So there is no response there. So all this 500 that is associated with server, and other 500s are not too common. Okay. So we have discussed about this. Let me show you, like using this, right? Let's say a small practical something. So let's say I'm opening google.com. Okay, google.com is my first request, and you can see there is a 200, right? 200 response code. You see, this is a let me expand this a little bit. Okay, the status. So let's focus only here. Okay, 200 means success. Let's say I go to this p.com. Okay, so what is happening here? The first ever request, it is 300. Okay, so if I click on this, just a moment. Okay, so you can see the status code is 300 and it is in amber, means this URL has been redirected to some other URL. Okay, so what that is, we can see this The request URL is https fb.com. This got redirected to https, a full name, right? That is facebook.com. And now you can see this is a 200. Okay. So this is redirection. That is 300. 301 is permanently redirected. Okay. Let's say I'm going to search something like uh, some random name I would like to search, which is probably is not should not be available with Facebook, right? So I'm just thinking what I should uh, search. Any suggestion? Or let's see. Okay, let's search something like NeoLoad 9.0. See this, right? What happened? 404. What this say? What this is saying? There is no such page is available, right? 404. It is in red, as we could see, right? 200s in green, 300s are in amber, 400s and even 500 should be in red. Okay, now you got it right, like how this goes. So 500, uh, let's say I'll go here, I'll try to register. Okay, this I randomly stumbled upon. Okay, let's say I give all this information. So let's say I've left this empty. Okay, this is supposed to be null, right? Try to save this inform. You see this, right? What happened? So the server is expecting some information in that in that specific. See this, right? What it says? Unhandled exception in report. Unhandled exception in exception handler. That means whoever has developed this web page, right? This application did not handle this exception. I think they have purposely left it, right? They have purposely left not to handle it, so that we can see these kind of issues, right? That is the 500. So 500 happens when the server itself does not know, or whenever it uh, looks at some exceptions. Okay, so this is the 500. Any questions so far?
No, no, well,
No. Okay, great. uh, just a moment. You're clear with this, right? That is the whatever that we discussed today.
yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So I will share this link. Okay. Whenever you get time, please check it. Okay. Okay. Next is workflow types. Okay. So there are only two types of workflow. Okay. One is unauthenticated. Another one is authenticated. Okay. Unauthenticated means the user, that is the end user, is not identified by the server. So the server does not know who is accessing. There is no identity. Okay. Authenticated means the user is identified by the server. So it's like this. Okay. If we look at any e-commerce web page, let's say Amazon, right? Most of the traffic, that is 98 or 99% of the traffic of this e-commerce website receives is unauthenticated transactions or unauthenticated users. This is just, I mean, not everyone will go to amazon.com and then log in immediately, right? that is that is very so the the user actions anticipation itself is different over there. Okay, so that is unauthenticated, but that is not the case with Facebook or Instagram or any social media for that matter, right? So what happens with Facebook or Insta or any social media? First, the user needs to be identified who is using it. Okay, I mean, identified means it can be some account is required. It can be real account or maybe a dummy account or a parody account, right? Um, but there in with social media, the user is identified by the server. Okay, so this is a distinct difference between these workflow types, and there is only these two types. Okay, so we will discuss about this unauthenticated and authenticated in detail in the coming session. A very interesting topic, like how these are identified and how the server takes into consideration all the other aspects that we will discuss in the upcoming session.